Hi, Lauren. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for
Hi,
being on today.
you betcha.
I got your name and reference from Kevin Johnson with Potato Potato. One of the questions I love to ask everyone who comes on here is, are there any nonprofits in town that you love and support? And he said, you've got to go talk to All Breed. Just to get us warmed up, can you give a brief synopsis of All Breed?
Sure. Well, what we do is twofold. On the rescue side of things, we rescue dogs who, for one reason or another, have been deemed unadoptable, typically by the local shelter, but we will work with any shelter in Colorado. However, we only work with dogs within our state. So these dogs have been deemed unadoptable, typically because of either behavior or training issues, socialization issues, or medical issues. So we pull those dogs into our foster homes and we rehabilitate them, do whatever they need. They stay with us for however long it takes for them to be rehabilitated, and then we place them up for adoption. So that's the rescue side of things. On the training side of things, we're a full service dog training facility. So we offer classes such as puppy class all the way up to competition obedience and agility. We also do full behavioral evaluations and behavior modification, including dogs who have socialization issues. The type of method that we do in our training is called relationship-based training. And what that means is I'm never going to ask an owner to do anything that's going to damage the relationship of trust and cooperation that they have with the dog. None of our training is done through fear and intimidation. We don't use things like shock collars or pinch collars or even choke chains. I have trained dogs to top competition level without ever using any type of. I train service dogs. I train diabetic alert dogs and allergy dogs without ever having to use that type of corrective training methods. And science backs the type of training that we do. All of our training is based in science and scientific research. And so trainers who are not following protocol when it comes to the cutting edge of behavior modification and training in dog training are kind of behind the times. It's like if I would use a rotary phone right now. There is so much better information about how dogs learn and the lack of the need for that fear, intimidation, physical and verbal corrections. It's just not needed in dog training.
How did you learn to do that?
Well, it's a long story, but my first dog I got as a puppy, and he was a pit bull, and he was 12 weeks old, and I brought him into my vet clinic, and I said, "Look, I just got this puppy." I was 20 years old, and my vet said, "You know that's a pit bull, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." I didn't know what that meant, and my vet said to me, "That's a ticking time bomb, and he may attack you at any moment." And because he was a veterinarian and I didn't know any better at the time, I believed him. And I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And so he's like, you better take that dog to the local obedience club. This is 1996 in Tallahassee, Florida. And so I took Obsidian to the local obedience club, and they were like, you know that's a pit bull, right? I was like, yeah, I've been told. They're like, well, we better get a choke chain on him right away. And so at 12 weeks old, Obsidian had his first choke chain. And I taught him how to sit by pulling up on the choke chain and pushing down on his butt. And the reward was the release of pressure on his neck. I taught him to lay down by stepping on the leash. And when he laid down, the reward was the release of pressure on his neck. I taught him to stay by telling him a word he didn't understand. And then if he moved, I choked him. This was the type of training that I was taught. And so I was really good at it. I was very good at my timing when it came to the corrections. And my instructor said to me, you're really good at this. You should do competition obedience with your dog. And I had just retired from competing with horses, and I like to compete in things. So I started doing competition obedience classes. And the main difference was that in competition obedience classes, those corrections with that choke chain came much faster. So Obsidian and I went to our first two shows, and he showed well. He qualified in his first two competitions with a 172 and a 173, and a qualifying score is 170. And I was like, yeah, we're doing really good. I was very proud. And we went to our third competition, and we were at the point where we do the recall. And in competition obedience, you cannot repeat a cue. So once you call them one time, they have to come immediately. Obsidian was 9 months old at the time. And when I called him, he had looked into the other ring because there was a dog in the other ring, and he had missed his cue. And in practice, that would have meant I would have come up to him and popped him with the choke chain. And so when he looked at me and he realized at 9 months of age that he missed that cue, he got up and started slinking to me, and then he laid down and he wouldn't move. He was done. He was no longer okay with that type of interaction. And I realized that was the moment where I realized this is not okay. There has to be a better way to train dogs than this. And so I started doing research, and I went to the library because we didn't have the internet in 1996. And I found only 2 resources when it came to dog training, and most of them were not by dog trainers. They were primarily about marine mammal training. And I was reading through information, and one of the trainers said, I train killer whales to allow me to ride on their back. If I put a choke chain on a killer whale, they would drag me to the bottom of the sea and kill me, right? They'd take me to the bottom of the tank, right? I train dolphins to find underwater mines for the military. They are free to leave. They are in open water. They are free to leave at any moment. If I don't have to use a choke chain or correction on these marine mammals that could kill me or could leave at any time, why in the world would you ever have to use it on a dog? Just because you can doesn't make it right. And that was a moment where I was like, there is a better way. And I started researching clicker training, and it was very new using clicker training in dog training at that time. And I moved out to Colorado, and I went to the local obedience class, and they had just started a new sport at that time, which was agility. It was brand new as a sport. And what I liked about it is that you could not use choke chains, because they did allow that in the beginning, but they would get caught on the equipment and hang the dogs. So they outlawed using choke chains in agility. So I started doing agility with Obsidian without any kind of correction, and he loved it. He literally turned into a different dog because he was always very kind of subdued and timid, and all of a sudden this like very happy dog blossomed. And so we decided to compete in agility, and we went to our first agility competition. And at the same day, obedience was happening, and I really wanted to get, you only need 3 qualifying scores to get a title, and I really wanted to get that obedience title. So I enrolled him, and I turned to him and I said, Obsidian, if you get your title today, I will never make you do obedience again, and you will get to do agility for the rest of your life. And we went in that day, and he was the only dog there on a flat collar. He was the only dog there that was not wearing a choke chain. And we went in, and we got a 199, and we got our qualifying score, and we never did obedience again. We did agility for the rest of his life. He was the first pit bull to compete in agility in the state of Colorado and number 10 in the country. And he is the reason why I do everything that I do. And that's why I have been a crusader ever since for positive reinforcement and relationship-based training.
Listeners, thank you for tuning in to Central Colorado Springs Advice Givers Podcast. Go to iTunes, leave us a review, and leave us some feedback. This is a conversation. We do want to hear from you. Please tell us what you think. Subscribe on iTunes. That'll help us reach more people so that all together we can keep making Colorado Springs better.